This episode is presented to you by NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. With NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV, you can watch your favorite team's out-of-market Sunday games, plus watch up to 4 games at once with Multiview. Don't miss the race to the playoffs. NFL Sunday Ticket is now just $39 when bundled with YouTube TV, where you get even more football. Visit youtube.com/Spotify offer to sign up now. Lowest price on YouTube TV with base plan. Rest of 2023 season. Terms and embargoes apply. No cancellations.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Transfer Podcast on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Trev Downey, and of course I'm joined by Dave Davis to talk about what is happening in the world of transfers. It's coming up on us fast, folks. It's starting to be a real thing that we can talk about because it's actually happening. How much of it will be happening around our club is, of course, a matter of some concern and debate, and that's exactly what we intend to kick off on this show. So let's begin it by welcoming Dave back to your ears. How are you doing, buddy?
I am good, mate. It's the time of goodwill to all men, isn't it? Including even the likes of Guy Drinkle. So I am well fed, I am well drank, and I am ready for this one.
Your ongoing imaginary beef with Guy is one of the continuing highlights of our coverage here on Anfield Index, and I do enjoy it. Where to start except with Liverpool, Dave? Let me just flag it up, and I'm going to let you do your disclaimer here first. Before we get into your well-prepared schedule of points here, it very much is going to be a movable feast and an ever-changing thing, and there's absolutely a potential, isn't there, that what we know now will have changed because of recent injuries like the one to Costas Tsimikas. But it would be fair to say, wouldn't it, that there's not much by way of concrete noise, just so we can get this out of the way in case people are tuning in waiting to hear about all the thousands of players we're being linked to, because obviously we're going to buy all the players, because obviously injuries will dictate that, and obviously we missed out on that 6 that we obviously wanted. None of that logic really applies, as we know, with this ownership group and with this particular management structure. So we should get that little disclaimer out there early and often, that, you know, we can only talk about what we're hearing, and it's probably not as much, Dave, for Liverpool as people would be excited to hear.
The holidays start here at Kroger with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Kroger has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. We've done the normal. We've asked, we've harassed, we've harangued people to try and get as much as possible as we normally do. I think, like you kind of alluded to, Trev, there may well be people thinking we've got to do business. Look at Tsimikas, all the injuries. I get that. I'm not disagreeing necessarily with that in any way. However, exactly as Trev said there, everything that we're pretty much getting from everyone is the club are well aware, shall we say, of what's out there. You know, that it's not just they're not doing anything in this market, but there's nothing imminent, and there's nothing that suggests that there will be move or moves, either single or plural at this stage. There is always that favourite outside option, which we love, Trev, you know, where a sneaky Gakpo or a late Diaz type of thing. There's always that possibility, and Liverpool are always poised for that, as we know. So it's not non-existent, but hopes for big moves or big changes are pretty limited in this camp, let's be honest.
I just think it's important that we say it at the start of the show because, people will be understandably excited, and it's important that people don't get the hump with us. We are merely the messengers, and as everyone knows, you don't shoot them. And Dave said, I've tried to talk to Dave about his approach with journalists of the well-known variety whom he harasses and harangues, as he says himself. I tried to ask him to be a bit nicer, but Dave is Dave. He's famously short on sentiment, and he does actually put himself in the way of getting potentially dog's abuse off people so that we can bring you whatever we can bring you, and we can only do that. So let's get into it. And there are the whiff of some stories and rumours. Of course, we can't talk about Liverpool and transfer window without big Jorg Schmadtke sticking his peculiar shaped ball capped head into the picture. There was a tweet which caused a little bit of discussion on the 19th of December, which will feed into what you can tell us about Schmadtke. Of course, there was, I think, understandable hopes after what someone would say not exactly a wonderful display by Big George to date. There were hopes that the likes of the much touted, much vaunted Max Eberl would be potential recruit for Liverpool. But it's not just players that it seems we find it hard to be tempting at the moment or are interested in recruiting at the moment. Tell us about the Schmadtke thing. Is it coming to an end? Is it going to be ongoing? Is it in a grey area that we don't understand? Is there anything to help us clarify what's going on there?
Well, Trev, in the lesser-known words of St. Peter the Confessor, it's one last ride before I head off to Capi Del Mar with my glow sticks, and that is exactly what Schmadtke will be doing, because as Plettenberg said, and as quite a few have confirmed it, even David Lynch mentioned it on Media Matters for us, Jorg Schmadtke will be in place for the January transfer window. However, barring a complete change of heart on his retirement, on Liverpool's part, everything pretty much is geared towards that this will be his last window, and then it's off back to his Ibiza villa, which, like you said, throws up all manner of questions like what's happening as a new sporting director. And also, as David Lynch mentioned, Max Eberl, the one that keeps getting linked, Liverpool have definite interest in him, but there is nothing imminent in that regard at all. Everything is just focused on the coming months or month ahead, so to speak. So probably the suspicion is, quite a few have said, Trev, that it's not what people will want to hear, but we've almost got to get this transfer window out the way for other developments in this area particularly to sort of come to fruition. But Liverpool are, as a few have said, searching, looking, deciding what to do, but nothing imminent, and it's one last wild ride for Big Jorg.
And do you, I mean, we've all heard the various takes on what it is that he's offered or not offered. And I'll be honest with you, I'm listening to your breakdown there and with great interest, because I don't have it in my heart to follow too much of what's going on there, because I do get the feeling there's a lot of fudging of the truth. And so it's news to me what I'm hearing. And do you know what my takeaway from what you said there was, Dave? The idea of retirement, and therefore the idea that it actually might just be up to George what happens at the end of the day. And that would speak to, I think, an inaction on the part of the club, or a contentment with the status quo on the part of the club that I think would actually probably get right on a lot of people's tits. I mean, what's your take about that?
Yeah, The thing about the whole situation is with Schmadtke at the moment, Trev, he's not actually a sporting director, is he? I mean, as he said publicly in sort of various German outlets, he is like a transfer assistant, and those are his words to Jurgen Klopp, i.e. Jurgen and the other members of the transfer committee obviously pick and suggest the players, and he goes and makes the deal or tries to make the deal. So from what all the journalists are saying to us, and this does make complete sense, Liverpool know that kind of model, that setup can't continue. It's never what's intended. And obviously, people will hark back to the glory days of Michael Edwards, maybe Julian Ward even, who knows. But it can't just be that sort of situation. We do need to go back. And the big word that keeps coming up is the holistic approach, i.e., the scouting department, the data analysis, the sporting director, the manager, etc. Even FSG and Mike Gordon are all aligned and working together. That's the big word that keeps coming up, holistic. So they know it can't continue. So I do think this is one final hurrah for Jorg, and then goodbye.
Yeah, it feels that way for sure. And I suppose it would be too much to ask that we'd have some sort of dramatic new setup in place ahead of the summer window. It just feels a little bit like a missed opportunity if we don't, because, you know, it's a bit much to expect someone to arrive and then suddenly have their feet under the table and be familiar with the way of working and then make the most out of the next summer window, which is always the big one. But anyway, it is what it is. Maybe old Schmadtke will go out with a blaze of glory and sign a few players for us, or get a few deals done rather for us in this window coming. And of course, one of the areas, and I've alluded to it already, which we feel is going to need addressing, is the defence in terms of the injury now to Tsimikas on the back of the injury to Andy Robertson, on the back of the injury also to our nominal defensive midfielder in Alexis McAllister. And so we're looking here at how we might make ourselves a bit more of a solid outfit defensively. I think most people will be happy enough with what they've seen from Liverpool in that regard over recent weeks. To a greater or lesser extent, we've seen some fantastic displays, almost uniformly excellent displays by Virgil van Dijk, which is heartening. And we've seen Ibu Konate be very good, Joe Gomez be very good. Trent has been excellent in terms of his forward play and very solid defensively at times as well. And obviously, young Kwanzaa has really put his hand up since Joel Matip was also ruled out. Now, anyone listening to that summary would hear that I'm trying to put a positive spin on the fact that we've got a lot of our defensive cohort, the key members, in fact, of that defensive cohort, a lot of them are just not going to be available. And we don't know what the schedule is for Andy Robertson's return and how long it will take for him to get back up to speed. We have a pessimistic enough outlook for Kostas Tsimikas and his expected availability. Alexis McAllister, of course, has disappeared into the darkness of Liverpool injury information, and that's for good and bad. I like the fact that our club is on lockdown when it comes to letting people know too much. I don't like the fact that it seems often as though we're being sort of led by the nose and given daft kind of information just to tell us to shut up. And of course, you know, if you could expect a Thiago or a Bajcetic back to help in those areas of the midfield, you might say, well, that'll be something. But again, vague, not sure, new year, who knows, shrug, shrug. It all boils down, Dave, to a team that is desperately in need of a boost if they are to maximize their chances of winning the fucking league, which is on the table. With that in mind, I've heard one name. One, you mentioned it here, so I'd like you to talk about that and anything else you might have heard from your interactions with Mr. Jones or any of the rest of them.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The name, and Neil Jones has sort of mentioned this publicly as well, quoting a few of the different bits he's done, that Liverpool are well informed, and that's a carefully chosen phrase, well informed of the situation of Hincapie, the play left back at Leverkusen. So that's hope, and people like that name. That's a lot of, there's a lot of Reds thinking that's the one I'd like because where he can cover the multiple positions. And I get that, not disputing that for 1 second. Here comes the bad news. Bayer Leverkusen have come out publicly, especially their sporting director, I think it's pronounced Simon Rofflers, and said that because Xabi's tearing it up there, isn't he? They're doing so well. They will not sanction any of their main players at all leaving in January because of how they're doing. So that was kind of the killing of the hope, shall we say, if people had that one. Even the other one today that I've seen coming up quite a bit, Inácio, a lot of people saying on the Portuguese outlet saying, yeah, we like the look of him. And there is a bit of a theme here, isn't there, Trev, so to speak, in that regard of left-sided centre-backs or centre-backs that can play left-back if you want as well. But again, asking round and sort of harassing, haranguing, is there anything in this? All the suggestions are no one's got anything reliable, imminent at all on an Inácio or an Hincapie, so to speak. And I know those are the two sort of prominent names that are coming up, shall we say. And I get it, Trev. I get what everyone's thinking. Sort of, we've said this before, that it almost takes us back to that time when Jurgen said the summer before, when he had all those midfielders, like, what do you want? What do you want type of thing? And he could almost be doing that again when you're thinking, well, look at how well Quansah's doing. Look at Virgil van Dijk, being unbelievable. Look at how well Joe Gomez can cover all these positions, etc. That is not disputable. Their form is a bonus. All that's great. Bear on the other hand, Trev, as you said, Costa's broken collarbone. We are threadbare. If we're not threadbare, Jurgen, then why are you talking about having to wrap up Joe Gomez in cotton wool? And as much as I've loved Joe Gomez this season, durability is not one of the things you'd list on his skill set, is it, so to speak, as well? So I really almost don't know what else it's going to take. And I know the big focus, as a lot of the journalists have said, is they're looking at the long-term Matip replacement, but they don't want to block the pathway of Jarell Quansah because look how good he's doing at the moment. And I'm not disputing that. I think Quansah looks a hell of a talent, but it almost feels like we're begging a bit, doesn't it, Trev, so to speak? But at the same time, just one solid, really good defensive addition, even if they had sort of the 6 months to acclimatise and ready and all that as an extra body, would make such the difference. But we are very much barking up the tree of hope rather than expectation, in all honesty.
It feels that way, and it feels as if when people are talking about what the club needs to do, it is very much in the vein of hopefulness. And I've heard repeatedly from various contributors on the channel, people saying things like, well, hopefully we'll do this, that, and the other in January. And yet, unless it's another January surprise, which we've had in the past, the amount of tangible links is minimal. Listen, it's a thing that I feel like a broken record saying it, but I don't know what you think, Dave, and this is just purely an opinion that I'd like to elicit from you, because we can talk all we like about Jarell Quansah's pathway to the first team. He's already there. We can talk all we like about the flexibility of Joe Gomez and him being able to play in a number of positions. That's fine, absolutely fine. But the point of the matter is, we had Alexis McAllister playing in a position that didn't suit him or maximise his potential because we don't have anyone to play in that position. We've seen Endo come into something approaching form in that position, but I don't think anyone's of the opinion that Endo is a season-long starter. And now we have a very, very real issue at left back. It's a very real issue because Andy Robertson's form before his injury was not good. So who's fooling who here? And so I'm bringing you to the very, very obvious question that I want to ask you, because I feel that it would be, and I've said this before on different occasions with the club, tantamount to negligent to leave it as it is and say the form is good, look at all these guys we've got, because that's not what teams who win shit do. Teams who win shit say, look at all the good lads we've got. Yeah, we'll take him and him as well. Thanks. Because they want to ensure that they stay in that good position. And I don't care how whiny that sounds, and I'm sick to the back teeth of the shade being directed at people like me who say stuff like that from these horrible, horrible, false positive, trust in Jurgen types. That's not what supporting a club is about. That's about being inculcated into some sort of religion or something. We're just giving an opinion. I'm giving mine. I don't want to drag you down with me, Dave. Do you think it's a silly idea to not strengthen at least either defensive midfielder or left back in this window, seeing as there is a league on the table?
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.25% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
It just feels like the Klopp era and transfers are defined by when it's going well, we're looking and going, we're just a little bit short, and any sort of the strengthening that we would absolutely love always just seems to go by, and then we just have those regrets, don't we, as we maybe miss a league by a point, a few results, or just bits where we're essentially, Trev, long story short, that word there, just that little bit short. So, yeah, I think it would just make such a difference. The other thing, and I get this argument, and I've seen people say things to you on Twitter, it's just mental. It's like, it's the extremes, the binary element that people fall into, that if you want to sign players, bedwetters, lack of faith in the player, all that type of nonsense that comes out. Whereas if you're the other side and think we don't need anything, and because people are entitled to both opinions, funnily enough, people are like, you're living in cloud cuckoo land, positive nonsense and all this. It's like, people can have both opinions. There's a reason it's called positive and healthy discord. I am dragged in with you, Trev. I am in the trenches there. I do believe that Liverpool really need to sign another defender. That is my strong belief. And to be fair, all the journos, the people we spoke to, are publicly on record saying the same. They do think. I think that's really important to say. If you look at any articles from Pearce, Jones, Lynch, anyone like that, they are all saying they do believe personally that Liverpool should sign another defender. So we shouldn't get that twisted in any way at all. But unless the club are going to give us that surprise again, not seeing it at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're right to point that out. It's all opinions are valid, and I'm always here for opinions that I absolutely disagree with and having a civilized discussion about them. There's just really no need to be a complete knobhead in your expression of what you consider to be the correct way of looking at the world. That goes across the board, not just in football. We do have, obviously, some Liverpool adjacent stories to just tie up. One, and we'll go with this one first, is a rumour which started in the wake of the Tsimikas injury about a footballer who would be a replacement for that position specifically. Alas, I think there's not a whole lot to that. Would you either put that one to bed totally or clarify for us what that story was about a potential left-back signing.
Yeah, the Antoine Robinson from Fulham, the left-back, the former Everton youth product, but American international as well. So there was a story, wasn't there? Liverpool are interested in him. Funnily enough, Trev, I'll try not to be careful with my words, but I thought I'll just go for it. A journalist actually replied to it and said, "Utter shite, that one, mate." So
That'll do. I mean, that's as definitive as you can get. We do also have a whole load of our, well, quite a handful of our players out around the place on loan. A lot of loans going very badly. We've spoken about them on previous shows, but the only story that we're hearing anything definitive about, and this is via our assistant manager, Pep Linders, is about young Carvalho. So I wouldn't mind you breaking down what's going on there. I don't know that anyone's going to be wild excited about getting Carvalho back, Dave, if I'm being honest, in terms of, squad strength and whether that would paint over a few cracks in the expectations. I'm not sure. It's hard not to be cynical when you think about these things. Do we get the two lads back at centre half from their very, very unsuccessful loans and go, now we're covered? I mean, what's the future? But with Carvalho, at least we have somebody doing a bit of talking about him from the club and from elsewhere. What do we know about that?
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so Pep Linders does the Carabao press conferences, doesn't he? So he was actually asked in it about Carvalho, and what he said was quite clear that it is up to the directors. They're not involved in that, but he needs to play. That's the big thing, which is ultimately what he's not been doing at Red Bull, isn't it? So there was that. And then, funnily enough, it was a lot of German outlets came out with this, Trev, because the former Red Bull Leipzig player, Emil Forsberg, the Swedish attacker, Swedish winger, however you want to describe him, he then moved to the New York Red Bull franchise, a kind of nice retirement style pathway. So a lot of German outlets came with Carvalho will get those minutes now. He can play in that attacking midfielder, left-sided attacker role, etc. What they kind of conveniently ignored was at the same time, all the rumours were starting up around Elmas, who was the Napoli sort of attacking midfielder, who is now the Red Bull attacking midfielder, Trev. So what looked like an open spot in the Red Bull list has now well and truly been filled. So any suggestion that Carvalho is going to get extra minutes and that continues, that has been well and truly dispelled. So I think everyone's just waiting now to find out what are the terms of the agreement. It's like we said before, if Liverpool registered him, he can't go to another club at all, even if we called him back. If they didn't, he can. But the smart money still says that he's not going to be a Red Bull player, whether permanently, temporarily, for too much longer. So we await developments on that one.
We do. And, again, because we do try to be painfully honest on this show, I'll reiterate from my opinion on that. So, I mean, I can't exactly get wild excited about that one way or the other, because it sounds as if if that is the take and the kid needs to play, it's not going to be returning to the club. So there probably isn't going to be some sort of a fairy tale return where he gets to impact a drive towards the league title. So again, from a purely cynical, well, what's in it for us perspective, and yet another story that doesn't offer us too much in the way of hope. Of course, these things change very quickly over the course of a few days in these windows. But it does seem, Dave, always as if there are other clubs doing other things in a far more prolific way. Whether or not those other clubs are in as healthy a state as us, of course, is a different thing. And certainly not, those other clubs aren't sitting pretty top of the league. So we do have to maybe, to appease the uber positive people and say, well, I mean, it's hard to argue with our position in the league. But like I say, just from the purposes of this show, we are interested in wheeling and dealing. And of course, you don't go far from Manchester United for a bit of that. There's always something happening there. And we begin our Premier League roundup with them. It looks as if this Ratcliffe-Ineos thing is sort of getting to the point it was supposed to be at a long time ago. But there are a lot of potential ins and outs on the back of that, and probably would have happened anyway. There are talks about loans for Van der Beek. I think Hannibal's involved. There's some FFP chat. Mr. Ornstein had some news about Sancho. We can see that United have their eyes on a potential signing from Newcastle. There's quite a bit going on there, as ever. So, take a big swig of whatever your chosen beverage is and walk us through the latest at the circus that is Manchester United.
We needed 2 hits for this, Trev. I have just swigged a nice gulp of cherry Pepsi Max, and I don't even use one, but I've taken a blast of an inhaler just to cover all this, because there is so much to get through. I mean, Christ, if P.T. Barnum, and I know your literary references existed, this was the club he would pick to do his show around, because the circus just rolls on. I mean, everyone's seen it, that Radcliffe's now taken 25% of United, and whether you're talking Class B shares, it has the feeling of a Class A shit show, doesn't it, really? I mean, all the details coming out and the contracts being leaked, Trev. I mean, they've even got an agreement, the Glazers and Radcliffe, not to slag each other. That has to be written into the contract. Do you know what I mean? Like, in a situation where that has to be the case, it doesn't start on a positive foot, did it? So it's just insane what's going on there. I mean, to mention the things like you mentioned, Murtaugh, their current senior man, came out and said, obviously, by FFP, the fact, well, he didn't use these words, but I'm going to, the fact we bought a load of shite in the summer means we've not really got much money in January. And also, Trev, combined with the fact that, as Ratcliffe has said publicly in his statement, the deal still takes about 4 to 6 weeks to be fully ratified and go through, i.e., the January transfer window will be gone by then. So it doesn't feel like there's no suggestion any immediate impact, which means United have to wheel and deal, so to speak. So as you mentioned, you look at who they're trying to clear. Donny van der Beek has pretty much gone on loan. That's just waiting to now be ratified on the window to Eintracht Frankfurt, with an option to buy as well. So that's one cleared. Even Romano comes out today, Trev, and says that Hannibal, their young midfielder, he's got a license to leave on loan, so that's another one they can clear off the books. Ornstein, as you mentioned there as well, I mean, Ornstein doesn't tweet or write things lightly. Has said that United have looked at all options for Jadon Sancho, and even the option of a termination has been discussed of his contract. However, there's nothing that suggests they're going ahead with that. But naturally, you'd think a Jadon Sancho issue needs to be resolved one way or the other in January. And I mean, even if you can just get him gone, Trev, I mean, that's the best part of 300 grand a week off the wage bill there, isn't it? I mean, even Onana's now going to AFCON as well. So there's a goalkeeping issue on top of what they already have, although maybe if Onana leaves, that might improve the goalkeeping situation instantly. So who knows on that? But Martial has only got a short term left to go on his deal. And the one thing I would say about United, Trev, is they are easy pickings now across the board, aren't they, for transfer rumours, transfer links. And there's a hole in the roof, as Gary Neville loves to tell us. There's holes galore in their formations and all sorts of things. But they will get column inches galore. But don't be expecting, United fans, any big moves, anything to happen, because FFP is still an issue. If this whole thing is finally ratified, which is 99.99% certain to go through, it's still going to be chaos for the rest of the season at Old Trafford, and we're here for it. Simple as that.
Every time we're here for it. In fact, what we love if the chaos and malaise would spread just a little bit to their blue chums in the same city, rather than us having to watch them become Club World Cup champions and then come back to winning ways in the Premier League, just when we were starting to see a nice gap opening up. But we heard Pep Guardiola talking about his wonderful team in the imaginary story that he made up about how they were talking about Everton in the immediate wake of having won the Club World Cup. And he thought, that's my team. And it was probably one of the most made up little stories I've ever heard. And even if it wasn't made up, it's sort of sad and pathetic that he thinks that that's great, that lads are actually focused on doing their job. But I guess 2023, 2024, what do you expect? This is the nature of things. But they do have a situation there at the moment with at least one lad, a high-profile signing at the time, who can't get anywhere near the team and maybe on his way out. I'm very keen to hear about this because it is a guy who at one point was linked with Liverpool.
Reimagine this holiday season with more capability and more adventure in Kia's ever-ready lineup. This winter, gift yourself what you really want during Kia's Season of Giving Back sales event. Kia is offering great deals on the capable Sorrento and the spacious Sportage, and deals on even more vehicles like the all-electric EV6 and the fun-to-drive Forte. So visit your local Kia dealer and explore all your newfound possibilities by enjoying Kia's Season of Giving Back. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Event ends 1/2/24.
This one is should be no surprise to anyone, Trev. Kalvin Phillips. I mean, could there be a more backhanded compliment than Pep Guardiola gave, and publicly? So that, he did it to the news channel, so everyone's seen this. When he was asked about Kalvin Phillips and his future, he said, he's a great trainer, he's this and this and this. Remember that he actually said he came back overweight in the summer, but we'll just bypass that for a moment. So Pep's comment on this, Trev, was, he's a great player, great trainer. It's my fault. I just can't picture him in the team at the moment because of how we're playing. Oof. It's basically, Trev, like me going and knocking on Scarlett Johansson's door and saying, how about it? And her saying, you're a great guy, but I just can't picture you with me. I think we all know what that means. It's the most backhanded compliment ever. And people have suspected he's been going, like you said, he's been linked with us. And then Romano and a few others initially had Juventus as the front runners, alone with a potential option to buy, because the Euros is coming up, isn't it? And Kalvin Phillips needs and wants game time desperately. However, in the last few days, most of the outlets, your big ones like your Athletics, the Daily Telegraphs, all the main reporters have that Newcastle, Trev, and now at the front of that queue. Newcastle with their injury crisis, etc., looking at a loan with no option to buy. Similarly, because they've got FFP issues that way as well. So it was Juventus initially, but in the last few days, all the headlines are that Newcastle on a loan with no option are the front runners.
That's probably the most obvious move in the world when you think of it. I think it would make absolute sense for both parties. And sadly, I can see it being a success for both parties, which sticks in the craw a little bit. But yeah, as you said, that Guardiola lad, what a chap he is. is there any greater shite talker in world football? Probably not. Spurs, of course, will always be in the conversation when it comes to transfers and transfer windows. And there are a couple of little stories in circulation around them, one thing seeming to be contingent on another. Ange Postecoglou, I think, has, on the whole, very much made a very positive impression there. They had that bad run after having a great run. But I think overall, if you were to ask Spurs fans, they'd be very, very excited by what they've seen so far. And you would imagine then that that's starting to buy the kind of goodwill which equates to funds being made available for a manager. What do we know about what Spurs might be intending to do in the window?
Mate, you know what he's like, Big Ange. He's been quite honest on this, hasn't he? That Spurs are desperate for a centre half. I mean, it was already desperate, Trev, when they're up in hamstring and he's going to be back sometime in Jan. It got even more desperate when Christian Romero, as in the last press conference, confirmed will be out for around 5 weeks. So Spurs are desperately short of defenders. They're looking, and they're looking hard, Trev. So we mentioned Todibo. They've got a lot of interest in him. The Nice, the French international centre-back. The other one that's now come on the radar, and I can't pretend I've ever sort of heard or seen of him, but Genoa's Romanian, and watch me butcher a name here, Trev, Dragusin, I think it's pronounced. So the suggestions that he has a release clause. However, the Genoa president has come out and said that's not the case. However, we're trying to get him to sign a new contract, which is a little bit suspicious, as we know, in those types of things. But essentially, all the smart money in the world says that Spurs get a new centre-half. And don't be surprised if it's one of the ones that's sort of knocking on the door with the shirt around the 1st of Jan, because they are desperate for defenders, and just confirmed it. He's just got to now convince good old Daniel Levy to open up that dusty wallet and bring one to the big new stadium, eh?
Yes, he does. And I've got a super idea for Ange and for Daniel. A really super idea for them so they can address that particular issue. And my idea is that they should buy Nat Phillips and Reece Williams for a combined total of about 60 million. And I think that'd see them right. What do you reckon?
Trev, you're not going to believe this. Who Tottenham were linked to in a couple of papers today. Tottenham apparently have an interest in Joe Gomez. No shit. A player that can play well across the multitude of defence. If ever you needed an announcement that silly season is upon us, Tottenham have a serious interest in Joe Gomez. I mean, what a waste of even chip paper, for God's sake.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable because obviously we are so well off at the moment in that situation that we would be willing to ship off one of our better performers in an area where we're badly hit. Yes, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But I really do think that if you're listening, Big Ange, Nat Phillips and young Reece Williams, get it sorted. It's a match made in heaven. What with it? There's even got the Celtic link there with Phillips. Chelsea, of course, will always be entertaining, except it's gone a bit quiet. And the big one we were sure of that was going to be an outgoing, because despite the fact that he was vice captain, he seemed to be up in the chopping block, was Conor Gallagher. And now there's talk about Pochettino wanting to keep him. Whether that's just talk or not, I'm not sure. But the madness, the usual Sweeney madness, seems to have gone a little bit off the boil. I'm very disappointed in the lack of stories swirling around the whole Chelsea situation. I thought it was going to be an absolute shit show again this window.
Yeah, there's still time, and it could be, but it's an interesting one because Pochettino's been honest to say we're looking, we need players. He clearly wants players. I mean, Stevie Wonder can see Chelsea need players despite having spent over £1 billion. They need reinforcements, which is crazy to say, but it's true. Conor Gallagher, Trev, out of the ball, Poch will be quite happy to, keep him. He's the captain there when Reece James is out because he obviously made a Weetabix type of thing. The problem is Conor Gallagher is an attractive, sellable asset for Sweeney Todd and the powers that be. Because he's homegrown, essentially everything's big profit, isn't it? He's obviously got a short-term deal, as in he's only got 18 months left to run at the same time. There's been no talk over extensions. So he's actually someone they could get decent-ish money for. So there's talk around sort of 40 to 50 million. Tottenham offered 35 in the summer, so it'd be interesting to keep an eye on that one. But he's one they could get money for that's not on one of these stupid 500-year contracts and would be clear profit that way. On the incoming side, Trev, how disappointing. Pape de Jong, who I've never heard of, but a Senegal youth midfielder who sort of shined at the recent Youth World Cup, is the only recent one. There's still time for Sweeney Todd to do a madness, but he needs to get the whole sort of game in gear, shall we say. But you never write Chelsea off, but it's quiet on the old Western front there. Let's put it that way.
Strange, though, isn't it, Dave? On the back of Pochettino publicly saying that he needed to have a chat and have a word because there was recruitment needed. They needed to do something in January. And all we're hearing about is a potential wonder kid or talented youth and an outgoing. So I wonder, is it just that perhaps now they finally got their act together and they're keeping their business a little bit more buttoned down? Is that a possibility? Because, as you say, the actual stories emanating from, comparatively reputable journalists are very minimal.
This will be like that bit, if it's true, when you were a kid and your dad said to you, "I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed." That's what we'd feel, in all honesty. However, there is no way that before the 1st of January, I can give up whatsoever on Sweeney Todd. Just another couple of adverse results, and he's got some crazy moves left in him. So there's still time, and there's more than enough hope as long as he's at the helm.
Yeah, I'm eyeballing the whole situation hard now, and there's at least one eyebrow raised Roger Moore style in his direction. He needs to get his act together. We have a show to produce. Christ, come on, Sweeney. You know what's required of you. There are two other clubs who are linked with at least one signing each. Probably should have referred to the City one earlier on. We were talking about Kalvin Phillips on the way out. If you wouldn't mind starting there. And then the new boy, Nuno Espirito Santo, is set to make his first signing for his new club as well.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, probably my fault, could have put them together. So with Kalvin Phillips set to go, this would be annoying, Trev, but City, as a few people have reported, are set to wrap up or expected to wrap up the deal for the young Argentinian sensation, Carlos Echeverri. This kid has really shone at the sort of Youth World Cup for Argentina. There are massive, massive hopes for this sort of River Plate youngster. And they do this annoyingly, don't they, Trev City? If you think back to when they got Gabriel Jesus for a pittance, from a Brazilian club at the time, and back to when they got Julian Alvarez, and think how good he is now annoyingly for a pittance. They do this, don't they? They agree the deal on the cheap. They're happy for him, which are the suggestions, happy for him to stay at River for another year or so, and then they will bring him across to mainland Europe. So there's been a lot of interest in this boy, apparently. PSG were interested, but he wasn't. Barca, but they just didn't have the finances. A lot of Europe's big hitters are well aware of how good and how skillful this kid is. And speaking to a couple of the South American journalists, they are like, yeah, this kid has real elite potential. So it's annoying, but it sounds like City will be his destination. So we're expecting that to be confirmed in the week or coming weeks. And then, as you mentioned, Nuno Espirito Santo in place now at Forest, and obviously got a win the other day. Forest, Trev, they're the ones we talk about Mo Salah and how gutted we are about AFCON and him going. Forest could potentially lose up to 7 players for AFCON. So they're going to be hit really hard potentially. And naturally, you'd think he wants new players in as well. So Gelson Martins, the Monaco winger, the Monaco attacking forward, if you want to describe him as that, is expected to sign. That kind of broke earlier today for them, just simply because as well, they need bodies, don't they, more than anything. I mean, they're already struggling. I mean, Big Div probably enjoyed a few Christmas dinners as well, so he's not going to be in the best of shape. So they need reinforcement. They need attacking reinforcements. They need multiple reinforcements if you're going to lead or lose 7. So do not be surprised if this is the start of multiple bits of business for them.
And our final section is probably the shortest it's ever been, primarily because there's not any big noises coming from our pals over in Saudi Arabia. And of course, that could change and probably will change. Again, I am a little bit shocked at the lack of at least seeding of stories at this point. I find it a bit weird. I'm wondering, it's a sign of a couple of things potentially, that the big grand plan may not be going as expected, or already in the early stages of abandonment, or perhaps it's just that the reality of paying the individuals they already have brought over is starting to hit home a little bit. Who knows? But when you have an infinity money, it's an odd one. But we have no real Saudi Arabia stories today. We do have a PSG story. We do have an AC Milan story. And we do have a little wrap up on a story that we did before around Luis Suarez. So we'll start in France with PSG. And they're having a look at another player that we're very good at being linked with players. And it looks as if it's going to happen for them. There's a certain expectation around this particular signing for PSG. It would be a good one for them. Start us there.
Yeah, it does seem as though, I don't know if PSG have copied the homework of Liverpool scouts, so to speak, but as even an update about an hour ago, Trev, that 2 South American youngsters are expected to come to PSG. So Liverpool were linked with Lucas Beraldo, weren't they? The Sao Paulo centre-back, young, left-footed, brilliant on the ball. We liked him, we looked at him, didn't mean we make a move. And now PSG have. I mean, it was even linked with Leicester a couple of weeks ago, but it seems PSG are set to win the race. And then the other one, which people may be more familiar with, Moscardo, the young Corinthians battling midfielder, as it were. So again, a real elite potential talent, as a lot of South American journos have signalled. There was a lot of clubs linked with him, but again, money talks, don't they? And it's so interesting, PSG, because no one's really sure about their strategy ever. But having had the Mbappe years, and now they've tried to sign all the young French players, haven't they? Like Barcola, Moani, to appease him this way. The strategy now seems to be, let's bring in young South American talents, almost as though someone from, Brighton's moved in charge of PSG, weirdly. But the full expectation is that any day soon, Beraldo and Moscardo are going to be confirmed as PSG players.
Yeah. It is always so disappointing to hear names that we were linked with being very definitively linked elsewhere. AC Milan are obviously trying to do a little bit of business as well, and there's talks about a name that we've heard, I think, on the last show here, and that is an interesting one because it will possibly steal a little bit of the thunder of a couple of Premier League clubs who are linked with this guy. What is that? Our second last story of the day with AC Milan.
Yeah, he's been on fire. We've mentioned him before, like you said, for Stuttgart. And the big thing is that Guirassy's got that clause for this window, hasn't he? €17.5 million. In football terms, it's pretty much a pittance for strikers. Not in real world terms, but it is in football terms, as we know. Now, a lot, as Falk, Plettenberg had said, a lot of the Premier League clubs were interested, but a lot of the journos have now updated to say that AC Milan had stolen a march on him, that, you know, they were favourites, they'd opened talks with his agents. But even now, Trev, the interesting thing, the big development today is that clubs are just a little bit unsure. And even AC Milan, who've got Luka Jovic, you know, on their playing well for them, so to speak, and everyone's just double guessing a little bit. And the main reason for that is the player is away to AFCON, which complicates things for a January transfer, because obviously a lot of the clubs that have been linked with him want him and his goals straight away. But they also have to think that he's 27, he's not young, it's a different league from the Bundesliga, all those types of things. So AFCON in the mix makes it difficult. It is hard to predict with this, Trev. I wouldn't be surprised if I had to bet that he does leave this window, but it's later. As in, a lot of clubs are just going to wait to see how he gets on in AFCON, i.e. hoping that his country gets knocked out, hoping he doesn't pick an injury, and then he becomes very attractive. But it's understandable if clubs don't want to sort of make this move on the 1st of Jan when the player's going to depart at the same time. So, barring anything major, I still think it happens for this player, but we may just have to wait a while in this window.
And finally, we have a tale of an ex-Red, a much beloved ex-Red, one of the greatest attacking footballers of the modern era, Luis Suarez, and he's obviously having his current little spell where he was doing well in Brazil, but now it looks as if there's an option for him, and it had looked as if there was an option for him to either retire and get his knees and hips and everything else fixed, or to pump himself up with some more painkillers and whatever other magic juice is required to get lads back on the field and give it one last whirl and go out in a blaze of glory over in the States with his old pals in what is fast becoming the old boy network from the Catalonian region. Talk to us about what the final take is with Luis Suarez and what will surely be his swan song.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
Yeah, after he played the whole, you know, my body's giving way on his last day for Gremio, you know, injections and all this type of thing. We knew it, didn't we, Trev? It was all just the prelude to the dramatic unveiling that he's joined his old mates, Messi, Busquets, Jordi Alba, and he has signed that year contract for David Beckham and Apple's into Miami. We said it before. We all expected it to happen. It's one last final payday. It's the old boys together for one last ride into the sunset. Everyone's happy. It'll make good viewing. Inevitable.
inevitable, and it should be, like you said, a recipe for a little bit of crack. Plenty of videos on Twitter as he goes past 89 players and blams it into the top corner, because that's what he's going to do. And yeah, I mean, who could begrudge such a talented footballer an opportunity to finish up in that way, and do what they call looking after his future generations. And some people will see it as the higher moral ground than taking the Saudi dollar, so whatever. It's just going to be something for us to have a look at and be interested in from afar. Hopefully, though, in the interim, we'll have a whole lot more to be getting excited about on the Liverpool front in terms of actual movement from our setup towards supplementing the very successful ranks that we have in place at the moment. That, of course, remains to be seen, but we live in hope, Dave and I. And it has been yet another fantastically information-packed show for which there's only one man to blame and thank, and that is Mr. Davis. So yet again, sir, thanks a million.
Good stuff. Nice to catch up, and hopefully we bring you a bit more positive on the Liverpool side, people, in 2024, eh?
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. We'll leave it there. Talk to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.